Talking about jobs, by the way, we've got 3 rather well-heeled, well-known pundits at Sky Sports who have been axed. Is it another example of the cancel culture? That's right, let's take a look at this. Sky Sports have confirmed that former footballers Matt Le Tissier, Phil Thompson and Charlie Nicholas will no longer be a part of their coverage during the 2020-21 season, having contributed nearly 50 years combined since hanging up their boots. 3 icons of sports broadcasting who are now facing the axe. Is it political correctness gone mad? Are they too old? Are they too white? Let us speak now to an icon of broadcasting himself, somebody that can never be cancelled. In fact, he is Talk Radio's brand new star signing. It is broadcasting legend Mike Parry. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Mark, what an introduction. Thank you very much indeed, and a great pleasure to join you. Look, we're all in the broadcasting world, aren't we? And we all know that things change all the time, and the whole idea is to keep refreshing and hoping the audience will appreciate new ideas, new innovations. But I do have to say, you've made such a good point there. Some of these guys have been there over 20 years, and that Saturday afternoon show with Jeff Stelling, it is literally iconic. The guys sit there. Sky came up with that over 20 years ago, 25 years ago, because you can't have live football matches kicking off at 3 o'clock because it would interfere with the crowds and the fans that go to all the other games outside of the Premiership. So they said, no, it's got to be earlier. It's either Saturday morning or Saturday evening or Sunday. You can't have it at 3 o'clock. So they came up with this brilliant idea to have these guys staring into a screen and then telling you what was going on. You know what I mean? Almost like the first version of Gogglebox, if you see what I mean. Yeah. And, of course, they've been there. Now, I love the programme. I'm not often around on Saturday afternoon, but if I am and my team Everton are playing and they're one of the featured games, I love the updates that you'll get. I don't love the update if Phil Thompson's doing it, because Phil Thompson, of course, is a Liverpool player, former manager through and through.
And terribly biased.
Terribly biased indeed, but I think that was part of the attraction. Matt Le Tissier is another one who's going. If Matt was doing a Southampton game, the opposition couldn't kick a ball straight. And if Phil Thompson was doing a Liverpool game, as far as Phil was concerned, there wasn't another player on the pitch wearing anything other than a Liverpool shirt. It was very interesting, actually, because I saw Phil a few years back, must be some years back now, at Anfield, during a Liverpool-Everton game, and he said to me, "Oh, Mike, it's great." He said, "I'm joining your profession now, And I said, "Well, I suppose you sort of are joining it, Phil." I said, "But not many people come into my profession who, in their first profession, became one of the few men walking the earth who's lifted the European Cup and been the manager of Liverpool. But I mean, welcome and bring your expertise to it." And that's what these guys did. Matt Le Tissier, Charlie Nicholas, Phil Thompson, really, really recognised with the clubs that they played for and served during their careers, but also such a huge, wide-ranging knowledge of football and all that's gone on. I've always thought, Mark, and you may or may not agree with me, that when you put a broadcasting team together, I think they develop organically over the years. Take, for instance, within our organisation, we've got Hawksby and Jacobs, okay? And they've been there now for well over 20 years, and they're still as brilliant as they were on day one. Yeah. And I think that's what they've done. I thought they built up teamwork. However, every organisation is entitled to look at what they've got, to decide if they want to mix and match, to decide if they want to bring in new people. They have been accused, Sky, by some people of going a bit politically correct and wanting to get a more diverse panel. Well, diversity is something that all companies in this world are looking at. I am told, however, that they're not necessarily going to bring in another raft of full-time pundits to replace the guys who are leaving, and that it might be more of a rotation system, that they might prefer to, have a group of 10 or 12 pundits and each week could be different or something like that, which is another approach to it. But whatever, I'm sure these guys will be on hand to give us their insight into football for many years to come, because they are experts.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, your background is in the cutthroat world of Fleet Street, very successful stints at The Sun, The Express, and any number of other titles you could care to mention. You then became one of the architects of talkSPORT, which is now the biggest sports radio station, I think, in the world. And now you're back and firing on all cylinders here at talkRADIO. And I just wonder whether, at this organisation, it's all about delivering for the audience, and whether it's Hawksby and Jacobs, as you mentioned on talkSPORT, whether it's Julia and Mike or Ian here on talkRADIO, if people are delivering, why get rid of them? And I'm just wondering whether this decision looks to be motivated by the age of these men and, dare I say it, the colour of their skin.
Their whiteness, yeah. I've heard that accusation. But funnily enough, right, so take Phil Thompson as an example. What he would always be aware of is that when Bob Paisley was the manager of Liverpool, he never waited until that defender or that striker had reached their last legs and got to their last season. They were always going out looking for players who could challenge their established players, A, to give some competition for places in the team, but B, looking ahead all the time. Now, it could well be that Sky have been very smart about this. They've decided that audience perception of, as you quite rightly say, a group of sort of middle-aged white men is not perhaps representative of the audience who are watching Sky these days, and therefore they've decided to try and make the presenters a little bit more in accord with the audience and those who are watching them. That's their decision. That's what they've got to do. And at the end of the day, as you well know, Mark, better than I do, and you mentioned Julia, who's established, a terrific breakfast show on talkRADIO and become iconic in her own way, for her incredible knowledge of politics and her ability to interpret. But what I was going to say is, at the end of the day, the audience will decide whether this was a good idea or a bad idea, because in our business, we live by the number of people who are watching us or listening to us. And so they're quite brave, the bosses, I think, to put their neck on the line and say we're changing something that's successful, because now they've got to hope that whatever they replace it with will be just as successful. That's their job, and they've decided to get on with it. And
of course, Mike, not only have you been a star in front of the camera and on the microphone, but you have managed broadcast networks as well. And it was ever thus, wasn't it? This is showbiz. Of course you get fired, and what you do is you have to come back stronger. Dare I say it, Mike? You probably parted company with an employer or two over the years, and rather than kind of go crying to the press about it, you pull your bootstraps up and you crack on and look for the next gig.
Well, to be honest, I don't think these guys are crying to the press. The responses I've seen have been very dignified. Matt Letizia said, I've had 22 years, it's brilliant. Phil Thompson, the same. I don't know crying, but obviously it hurts. And you're so right, Mark. If you go into our cutthroat business, at some stage, bang, somebody's going to chop your legs off. And funny enough, it's very kind of you to have, given me the title of one of the creators of talkSPORT. Before I actually got round to curating talkSPORT, when it was originally called talkRADIO, which of course is what I'm talking to you on now, but it's a different station, I got the bullet from the people who put talkRADIO together right at the start.
Big mistake. Big mistake.
After just 6 weeks, because I wholly disagreed with what they wanted to do. And I only came back and got going and got into it when we all agreed on a plan to turn the original talkRADIO into talkSPORT. And then it built from there. Probably bringing in Mr. Alan Brazil was something that, made a huge difference to the development of that station. And as I've just said, bringing in people like Julia, bringing in people like yourself, if you don't mind me saying, are what you've got to do to develop the quality of a broadcasting organisation. And then, in my view, let the guys and the girls sit there in their seats for a while and organically grow it so that your audience grows with you.
Well, I think that's a really, really good point. Mike, before we let you go, we must remind our listeners when you're back on the air. I know it's on Saturday. We'll talk about that in just a second. A quick word on Harry Maguire. Now, this is not talkSPORT, this is talkRADIO, but to me this is a story that goes beyond sport. This is a very talented footballer. He's the Manchester United defender, of course, one of the most famous clubs on earth. I believe his salary is circa £200,000 a week. He's gone to Mykonos. He's got himself in legal hot water. There was a dust-up with some local cops. We obviously don't have to get bogged down in the details of it, but it's not a good look, is it, for one of the country's most high-profile and best-paid sportsmen?
No, it's not. And you're quite right to say that, look, you're talk radio, but you talk about current affairs. You talk about issues the people in the street are talking about. And he's captain Manchester United, and he's been leading the front pages for the last 3 days. So you're absolutely right to focus on this subject, because it's very important. What I'd say is that anybody you talk to in football will tell you Harry Maguire's a lovely lad. He's a lovely Yorkshire lad. He doesn't get into problems and all that. But my argument has always been with very high-profile footballers. I mean, it's alleged that he said to the policeman, don't you know who I am? I'm captain of Manchester United. The captain of Manchester United should never have found himself in a situation sitting outside a bar in Mykonos where this sort of trouble could arise. I'm not accusing him of anything.
Sure.
He's appealing against his convictions, and that must, go the course of time. But you shouldn't be on Mykonos, honestly.
Yeah,
You're captain of United. You can afford a very expensive villa somewhere up in the hills. You can afford a yacht, and you can take your family on a yacht where nobody can get hold of you. So I think it was ill-advised, the location, although I would like to support him as a bloke, having known a bit about him in football, and hope he gets it resolved.
I think what he needs to learn is something that you've extolled for many years now, Mike, and that is something that you call blado in, what is it?
Modo.
Blado in modo. Can you explain what is blado in modo? Explain.
Well, I'll tell you this, Mark. Bladder in modo is a shortened version of bladderation in moderation, okay? Now, bladderation is a very famous expression used amongst footballers for what they, for many years, tended to do after football matches. Oh, I'm going to get bladdered tonight, man. That came from a very famous footballer who used to be England captain.
A famous Welshman, by the sounds of it, yeah.
Thank you, yeah. And I decided to adopt that by telling our audience over the years, look, a bit of bladderation's okay, but bladderation in moderation is better. Follow the bladdo in modo pattern, and you can't go wrong.
Well, it's good advice, and something that you should not experience in moderation is Mike Parry, who is our new star signing here at Talk Radio, and he is back on the airwaves on Saturday at 5 o'clock for 2 glorious hours of radio entertainment. Thanks, Mike. We'll speak soon.
Well, thank you very much.
Fantastic.